And before you open a business, just think long and hard because once you start, you can't stop it. Like you are in it.
Welcome to PeiPeiTalks. This is Pei, and in this podcast, we have some different topics. One of them is about entrepreneurs in the food industry, how they start their business, and how they grow up their business. I am a Taiwanese, so this is actually a podcast which is in Mandarin Chinese, and I'm not very confident in speaking English for the whole episode. However, I really want to interview this woman, Chelsey Erickson, the owner of Finesse Pastries. So this is my first English episode. I hope you like it. And I am very happy to have Chelsey to join my podcast. We will talk about why she chose to start her business, why pastries, and her whole entrepreneur experience. I learned a lot when talking with her. I believe you will too. 这是我第一集的英文节目，也许也是最后一集，因为我真的很想要访谈这个人。他就是我在第一集节目里提到我在波士顿工作甜点店的老板。有兴趣听他创业的过程，欢迎继续听下去。那如果想要看文字稿的话，我也把我们的对话和内容全部翻译成中文，欢迎搜寻我的网站，我会把网站的网址连结贴在这集的简介里面。那我们就欢迎 Chelsey. Let's welcome Chelsey. Hi Chelsey, how's it going?
Hi Pei, I'm great. How are you?
I'm good. Well, thank you so much for joining my podcast. I'm so glad that I can have you to be one of my guests.
Yes, I'm so excited. I love your podcast and I'm so flattered that you asked me to be here and giving me a chance to talk to your guests.
You love my podcast, but you can't listen to it.
I know.
So Chelsey is my first boss when I was in Boston. Should I say boss? I'm always not sure how to mention about you.
Yeah. No, you could say your first client. Chelsey with Finesse, is my first client. Yes, client.
So in my first episode, I mentioned that how I found you. I remember that I messaged you through Instagram and you were just so nice that you just really replied me and let me talk to you.
I remember meeting you in person. I remember the first time that we met and I was like, She had all of her everything laid out and ready to go. You had thought everything through and I was like, I trust her immediately.
But actually I wonder, after you, I message lots of store owners, but it's just actually hard. I'm so curious that why did you believe me at that time?
I don't know. That's a great question. and honestly, I think you were one of the first people to actually reach out.
Oh, really?
I never got or if I received kind of messages before, it was from I'm this person from this company. And so I was like, so then I know you were like, oh, I did this in school. And then I was kind of intrigued to hear more because it didn't feel like you were trying to sell me. It just felt like more casual than that.
Oh, I got you. Because I saw so many messages and you just said don't reply.
Yes, because they're like, I'm Amber from this company, and you can tell they copy and pasted the message to everybody.
I got you.
Yours, I knew it was personal. I was like, oh, she actually is writing to me. Yep.
I was so curious.
Yeah, because yours was actually felt like you sat there and typed a message that you knew I was going to listen to.
Okay, so how about introduce yourself and introduce your brand first?
Sure. So my name is Chelsey Erickson. I'm the pastry chef and owner at Finesse Pastries. So we are based in Somerville, Massachusetts, and we also have a location in downtown Boston as well. We have kind of evolved over time as to kind of what our identity is. So I was classically French trained. So kind of the conception of Finesse started with French pastry and kind of my love for that based on my training and just how much I love to eat. So then, from there, I was pretty much strict French pastries. I'm going to go buy the book. And then as you kind of go and develop and based on your customers and just kind of growing myself as a pastry chef, I was like, I want to take French techniques and inspiration from that, but kind of make it, young and girly like me, because French pastry is definitely a male dominant field in France, and it's older French men are the ones who are good at it. So everything looks and tastes amazing, but it has like a similar aesthetic. It looks like an old French man made it. Yeah. So I was like, well, how can I take this training and the flavors, which I know are delicious, and at all of my training I made, delicious things, but kind of like make it a little more hip and liven it up a little bit.
How long have you been having this brand?
So I opened Finesse in 2012. So it's been about 9-ish years. And I actually registered the trade name, Finesse Pastries, when I was a sophomore in high school. So, even a few years before that, because I kind of knew I wanted to do it. And in our family, we would just be walking around and be like, oh, so, one day when I have Finesse, I think I want to do this or that. So it was already kind of like ingrained in my mind. And so I had the name then, but then we opened our first physical retail store in New Hampshire in 2012.
That's very long.
Yes, it feels like 40 years.
That's because you work so many hours a day.
Yes, I'm ready to retire.
Your one day is other people's 3 days.
Yes, exactly. You have to love it. Otherwise, you will burn out so fast.
And you mentioned about French pastries. You focus on French macarons. Is there any reason that you want to focus on macarons?
Yes. So when I studied, the French macaron is, in my opinion, the most tricky French pastry to make.
Yeah.
So you can do everything exactly the same, and one batch is perfect and one looks terrible and blows up in the oven. I really became obsessed with the science of them, and also they are delicious. Once you kind of master that, then the flavors and colors, all the combinations are endless after that. So it has a perfect balance, I think, of difficult technique and then creativity. And also they're just so delicious that that's the one thing that I just can constantly eat. So I just have kind of a special place in my heart, because I think it's a perfect balance of beauty and flavor, and also skill.
Be honest, your macarons are really the best one I've ever had.
Yay! You're not just saying that because we're talking.
No, I'm not. My friends who eat your macarons all said that.
I'm so happy to hear that, because that's so many hours of work going into perfecting them. And even when I travel anywhere, I'm like, I go to every shop and try their macarons.
Me too.
And I'm like, will I ever just be able to eat one and enjoy it without dissecting it and trying to analyze it?
I bought others macarons. I just think I'm wasting my money.
Yeah, you are spoiled from the kitchen.
So everyone, if you go to Boston, please visit Finesse Pastries.
And tell us that Pei sent you.
Yeah. And you have baking class as well, right?
Yes. So we actually kind of started those from the beginning as well. So we had some people kind of asking about the macarons, and so we just kind of casually taught a macaron class, and then it really snowballed, and now we teach a bunch of different things.
Yeah.
But I love teaching so much, and it's the perfect balance, because when you're in production, you have your to-do list and you're kind of just going through the motions like a little robot. But when I teach the classes, it kind of reminds me of the love of baking, because when people come in, they're so excited and they bake at home and they're eager to learn. And so it kind of reinvigorates my spirit and refreshes me, the fun side and the joy of baking, rather than the technical production of baking.
It's more meaningful, right?
Absolutely. And that's one thing too, is, baking at home because you love it is, as a hobby, is one thing. But then opening a bakery, of course I still love it, but it's different. It's totally different. It's not, you're not making these little batches of something and taking all this time. It is mass market, how much can you make in a small amount of time? So it definitely, loses some of that kind of finesse that you would have when it's at home. So that was one kind of, rude awakening that I got, because it's just a different kind of skill skill
Yeah.
of making, 100 cakes or one cake at home.
Yeah. And actually, I think baking classes are very smart. Like you already have these ingredients and your skill. It's not only about the cost, but also like you can enhance the interaction with your customers.
Yes, absolutely. And what's always nice is we have a lot of customers who will take pretty much all of our classes. Once they take one, they usually take a bunch. But if they don't, what's always nice is they will always at the end of the class say, oh my gosh, I did not realize how much work went into, whatever it is, the macarons, the pâte à choux. So even if they don't want to take another class or don't see themselves like, baking like this again, we have customers who realize the quality of ingredients that we use, the time that we take to make everything, perfect.
Yeah.
So that's always nice. So people kind of, if they take any class, then they kind of trust us and they're like, oh, I see that she does it differently.
They will know you more and love you more.
Exactly.
And how did you come up with Finesse, this name? How did you come up with it?
Yeah, so that was also in high school. I think I was just trying to think, I'm like, I know that all of my stuff will be just something, if you compared my pastry to someone else's, just something about mine just has like a little extra something. And then I was like, trying to Google, what does a little extra something mean? Coming up with all of these words and finding ones that didn't fit. And then I found finesse, which is just adding, pretty much that, like taking that extra little time, that extra little detail to make it that much better. And I was like, perfect.
I remember you told me like when you were what years old and you came up with this name. So high school, right? And
yes.
You just say, I'm going to have my website. And you registered a domain, which is so amazing.
Yep, I know. Or dumb, because I was paying for a domain for from sophomore in high school, and I needed another 5 years.
You need to pay it every year.
Yes, but I was so confident. I was like, there is no. And what was so funny is all along, I never had a plan B.
And you mentioned about your difference of your products to other. Is there anything else difference about your brand or products?
Yeah, so especially with the products. So our brand, we're constantly evolving kind of with the times, but our brand, is all about delivering happiness, which, you help me kind of hone that in.
Yeah.
So, no matter what we do, our brand will always be that into the future, no matter what. So that is solid as a rock. In terms of products, it really kind of also changes as I evolve. And kind of seeing cool things on Instagram kind of inspires me sometimes, or if I see a picture of something cool, or if I travel and I'm like, this is awesome, these flavors. So just kind of evolving with the times, I don't like going into kind of these old school classic bakeries that if you go in and then if you go in 2 years from now, they're going to have the same exact menu, the same exact everything. They just have their classics and they just, kind of pump those out. I want it to be kind of more modern than that and for the customers, but also for me, because I will go crazy if I do the same thing over and over.
Yeah, and your flavors keep changing every month.
Yes, customers are always like, oh, thank you, for coming up with these new flavors. And in my head, I'm like, it's not for you, it's for me.
And how about share your process of creating your business? Like what inspired you and why, and how did you start it, and why pastries?
Yeah, so growing up, I was a very chubby kid.
Really?
I was chunky and I loved dessert. So kind of in the early stages of it, I would always bake at home with my dad because when you're young and you want something, like a cookie, you don't have money and you can't drive. So you can't go to the store and go buy something. So you're like, I need to see what's in the house, look up a recipe and make it so that I can eat a cookie.
That's so cute.
So, then I really loved to bake, and it was something, my dad and I would do all the time. And then when it kind of came time for college or, thinking about it, and while I was baking with my dad, I would be like, I don't know what I want to do with my life at the beginning.
Yeah.
And then he was like, you love to bake. Why don't you think about that? And then as soon as he put that, planted that seed in my head, I was done. I was like, oh yeah, okay. So culinary school, I'm like, imagine doing this for my life. This would be my job. And then from there, it was kind of just making things, a bunch of things, experimenting for other people as gifts. And then just the love of it, I was like, okay, I'm going to register Finesse.
Are you still a dessert lover now or no sugar anymore?
Oh my gosh, no, still a dessert lover. And even sometimes I try to go like a few days without eating sugar. And it is so hard because you're like, I'm hungry. And you're like, there's a freshly baked cookie right in front of me. And you're like, how do you say no?
But you mentioned you love baking, love dessert at first. So you start to do that. Do you think you can combine the interest and career?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And kind of, it's so cheesy when people are like, do what you love and you'll never work a day in your life. But it is true. If you can kind of start with what your passion is and then kind of, just let it evolve into a career. It doesn't have to be from 0 to 100. You're like, I quit my job. I like to bake. I'm going to go rent a building and start my bakery tomorrow. It can be much smaller and gradual steps in that, which is actually probably the smarter thing to do. But there is a difference, and I can only speak kind of from the pastry side, and I'm assuming it's with other jobs as well. When you're doing something at home as a hobby for fun, it's kind of on your own time, at your own pace, by your own rules. When you open a business, that you still love it, but it changes a little. It's no longer what you want to do when you want. It's based on what your customers are asking for. You have all of your bills to pay. You have to pay all of your employees. Yeah. There's just like a lot more weight to it. So it's not so much of just like, ooh, this is really fun on the weekend. It becomes a little more serious than that. But I 100% believe you can turn a hobby into a career.
But even though like it makes you like lots of pressure, you still love it.
Yes. No, I still love it. There's definitely a lot more pressure, and sometimes during stressful times, it definitely takes the fun out of it. But the more kind of overwhelmed I get, the more I know I need to take time for myself, because you will kind of deplete your energy stores and creativity. And it goes in waves. Sometimes I have no creativity, and I'm like, I hate cookies right now. I hate cake. I don't even want to look at this. And then once I'm refreshed, I have like my head will be buzzing with all of these ideas, and I have so many notebooks filled with just random ideas and notes. So it kind of ebbs and flows based on the pressure and how busy the business is at that time.
What do you think you need to prepare when you want to open your own business?
That's a great question. So I can also say from experience that I prepared all of my numbers. I had all my costs, all of my food costs. I knew what it was basically going to cost me every day to open, payroll, all of this. And then you open, and it is like being hit by a Mack truck. So you can prepare as much as you want, and you should. You should do all of your research. You should know, especially, for me, food industry, you have to know kind of, city and state guidelines for health departments and permits and all of kind of that nitty gritty stuff that you need. And you need to know all of your numbers, all of your recipes, all of that stuff has to be done. But there is also some of like you are thrown in the deep end when you open, and you just try to not drown. So there's only so much preparing you can do, and then the other kind of chunk of it is just things you do as you're running it. Because even if you work in a bakery for someone else, even for years, there are things that the owner does that no one else does that you don't know about. So even if you're, kind of grow and you're managing someone else's kitchen and you're in charge of all this, the owner is still doing things behind the scenes you don't know about. So preparing, doing all of your research, taking a vacation before you start, but then, kind of going in with an open mind that, okay, there are going to be things thrown at me that I just have to kind of roll with the punches and learn as I go.
But actually, I very admire you. Like, I think you are so brave that you just started to open a store when you graduated, and we are at the same age, and you operate a brand for 10 years, like, which is so amazing. I'm so proud of you.
Oh, thank you. And also, I think for me, it couldn't have worked any other way. I think when people start a business or, you know, a company, you have to be almost a little bit naive, because if you know everything that is coming at you, you probably won't sign up for it. Like if I had to kind of restart again knowing what I know now, I would be much more hesitant and more scared to open. But when you go in and you just are so full of confidence and excitement, it just makes it so much easier kind of when like all of the bad things start to happen and when it gets tough. So I think me being dumb like that and so naive is the only reason that I'm here now.
I think I agree. Like you just learn or ask when you don't know how to do it and accumulate your experience, and then you may become an expert.
Absolutely. And, you know, especially the internet is such a great resource. You can research all these things, but then making, you know, other friends or contacts either in your industry or even just people who are also running a business, because there are some times that you just want to call someone and complain about being tired and having to stay late and just having, you know, people to bounce ideas off of. So, you know, if it's hard. So it's nice to hear from someone else that they're like, no, that's correct. Like, it's not easy. You're not doing it wrong. It's not easy.
And what's the biggest challenge that you face?
So the biggest challenge I would probably say is all the other aspects of the business besides the baking. I'm not that they're challenging that they can't be done, but for me, when I think, okay, I'm going to open a bakery, I love to bake, you're not so much thinking about all kind of the managing of other people that happens. So kind of the biggest challenge for me is, you know, having the 2 locations, managing the people, the staffing, the training, the scheduling. If you could just rely on yourself, which would be, you can't really grow that way. But that is so much easier than just trying to kind of juggle so many people, so many personalities, multiple locations. To me, that's been kind of my hardest thing.
I think that's my hardest thing too. Like in my career, I think managing people is really hard. If you ask me what to do, I can do it well. But if you ask me to ask others to do, I think it's very hard.
I could not agree more. I 100% agree. And it's so funny because when I, you know, tell people something or asking someone to do something, in my brain, it registers how I would do it. And I'm like, okay, so I'm just going to go and finish the task. It's going to be perfect. It's going to be great. I'm going to be fast. And then you kind of realize that not everyone is you. Some people need more instruction or sometimes the way you're explaining it doesn't make sense to some people. So it's a lot of realizing that you're not training yourself and you're not only working with yourself.
My dad always told me there are so many kinds of people and don't use your standard to look at others.
Absolutely. I need to write and put like on a sticky note on my desk, because that's something to kind of keep reminding yourself of. I love that.
Yeah. Every time when I'm so angry, I just think about this.
Just take a deep breath and be like, they're not me. And those, you know, other people have other strengths that when they're doing something that they're good at, and then they look at us and they're probably like, oh my gosh, like, why is she so bad at this? So, you know, we all have different strengths and we need to keep that in mind.
Do you think you've already conquered it, or how did you conquer this problem?
It's a work in progress. I constantly am you know, and working on that and working on myself and just realizing like, you aren't perfect, but there are some times when I will get so mad and I'm like, I just need to go sit for a minute and just take a few deep breaths and come back. So I've definitely got better, but am working on it always. I don't think you'll ever conquer it.
So in this whole entrepreneur process, what did you do that you've never thought about you'll do that in your life?
So it's even like some such small things. Like I now know how to like fix parts of an oven. I know how to fix a KitchenAid mixer. Like I can remove a toilet. When you are in a business, there are so many little things that go wrong that you learn. Like even I am terrible with technology, but then when our register or point of sale, something happens, I'm the one that everyone calls and says, Chelsey, help, this isn't working. So there are so many kind of random other tasks that I learned just from kind of picking up as you go. So you may think like, okay, I own a bakery, I manage the people, that's my job. But really, everything is your job. If something breaks, or someone calls out, or someone needs help with this, or customer's mad, it's you. Like, you are the person.
Absolutely.
So, learning, like, I could have any job after this. Like, I could be a plumber, I could be an electrician, I could do anything. So just all the little kind of things that I learned that I never in a million years would have guessed that now I can do.
I think I have the similar experience. Like, I didn't do any house chores when I was at home, but when I work at Starbucks, I need to fix the toilet, fix the light, fix everything.
Exactly. And you're like, when I agreed to work in a coffee shop or open a bakery, even work at a bakery, you're like, this was not in my job description.
Yeah. Okay. Have you ever had something special or crazy experience?
Yes. And I have only told a few people this, and I'm so embarrassed of it, but it's been so long that now I think I can mention it, because it had to have been like at least, I don't know, maybe our first year or two. And I was working, preparing for a wedding. They had ordered a bunch of pastries and macarons, everything. So I was kind of just working on that. And then I got a call, and it was someone from the venue. And they're like, are you almost, like, is your delivery driver here to set up for the wedding?
Yeah.
And then I was like, oh my God, I had thought it was the next weekend.
Oh.
So I was preparing for it for the next weekend. So I was like, okay, this week we can work on this. And then I was like, sure, just hold on one moment. And then I went through my orders, and I was like, oh my God, I had the date, everything was correct. Just in my mind, I was like, oh, that's next weekend. And so I said, yep, the driver is just stuck in traffic. And there were like 6 of us in the kitchen, and I said, everybody drop what you're doing. And I was like, you take this. And we pulled an entire wedding together and delivered it, and we were still on time. I don't even know how it was physically possible.
Oh my God. You must cry after it.
I did. I was so stressed at the time and just panicked and shocked that I didn't cry in the moment. So I don't know how that didn't happen. But then afterwards, the staff would just always joke with me, and they're like, Chelsey, we have an hour. Do you want us to prepare a wedding real quick? So I was so embarrassed, and that never happened again. It just was it was completely my fault. And I just totally spaced, and it was the worst. But it came out beautiful, and somehow we came together and made it work.
It's very crazy.
It was not fun.
I'm curious. No, I'm not curious. I already know, but people may be curious, like, what's your daily life look like?
So it kind of, changes. But typically, like, getting up at, say, 5 a.m., getting ready, coming to work. And then usually first thing in the morning is preparing all the pastries for both of the locations. So cakes, macarons, and orders. Then those get sent to, if they get sent to Boston or they stay in Somerville. And then we have our production list. So then I'll bake until about 4 p.m. So then that's all the production, everything else that we're low on, orders for the rest of the week, things like that. You don't even really stop for lunch. You just kind of like eat as you go. The only time you sit is when you pee. And then usually 4 o'clock is when I kind of stop, clean up, and prepare for classes. And then teaching from 6 to 8:30 at night. And then if it goes well, we can be out of the kitchen by 9. And then home by 9:30, and then in bed by 10 to do it again the next day.
You really need to retire.
I know. I have to wear a hat every day because of all the gray hair that I have. Just so much stress.
Please retire.
Yes. By 30, I will have a full head of white hair.
Well, what's the biggest achievement you've ever made? Like, what did you learn the most since you started your business?
Yeah, so the biggest achievement, I would probably say is either, to me, I was so excited opening a second location. I thought that was so cool, and I got to kind of design the kitchen how I wanted. And that was kind of the greatest feeling. I was like, oh my gosh, like you have 2 pastry shops. Like how cool does that sound?
Yeah.
Even though it's tiring and it is crazy, just kind of letting that sink in was wild. And then probably kind of on the other side is just having a team that we built that has been with us for so long. You know, when people kind of come in our kitchen, they grow with us and they stay. So like one of the people in the kitchen, she started as a counter person, then moved to the kitchen, and now she does, amazing work back here. So kind of the biggest achievement in that regard would just be like some of the people who have kind of nurtured in Finesse and become like amazing either pastry chefs or just have been so loyal. So, finding great people has been kind of something that I'm very proud of also.
I think
meeting
so.
people like you who you came in and you just put your tentacles all through Finesse and just always help and just have been a soundboard for me. And now I'm always like, what will Amber think? I have to talk to Amber. And you, I think what you are so good at is matching your brain to whoever you need to. So it's like you were around me enough that you knew how my brain worked, and then you could use that and think like for me. You are so good at that. And I'm like, oh, she just thinks the same way and has the same style. I'm like, no, I've seen her work. She can do that for other people too.
Yeah.
You are just so good at that. So meeting you too I'm very proud to have met you.
I really hope we can in the same city and just do something.
Me too. Someday we will. Somehow.
Okay, the last thing, is there anything you want to share with people who also want to open a business?
Yeah, how much time do you have?
Now you can share. No endless time.
Okay, I have 700 points that I want to talk about. So, a few different things. So, if you love it, I say go ahead with it. And just know that there will always be people, even just people in your family, who will kind of doubt, whether you should do it, and they're really just kind of having your best interest at mind. They just don't want you to fail, things like that. And they're doing it out of love. But you have to kind of put little headphones on and be like, I know, once you are sure, you've done all your research, once you know, be like, this is what I'm doing, and tune out everybody else. Because it is so easy for doubt to creep in, and then you second guess yourself. If you don't believe you can do it, then other people won't believe you can do it. So you have to first have like unwavering confidence, even if it's sometimes, of course, you are wavering, and sometimes you're like, what am I doing? What did I get myself into? But just kind of not letting those other people kind of get at you.
Yeah.
Then, of course, doing your research about your industry, working for someone else. Like if you, haven't worked in a bakery or don't bake, then you may want to, I wouldn't recommend opening a bakery. You need to kind of get embedded in it, not just to see what you learn, but also because you may not like it. You may love to bake at home, and then you go work in a kitchen and you're like, wait, I have to be up this early and I haven't sat down and like I'm tired.
Yeah.
So knowing that, beforehand, and there are a lot of times when people say, I can't wait to own a bakery someday. Like, I want to do what you do. And before you open a business, just think long and hard. Because once you start, you can't stop it. Like, you are in it. So for a bakery, I always tell people, and I say, okay, so why do you want to open a bakery? And it's usually one of two answers. One is they say, I love to bake. And I say, okay, so when you open a bakery, maybe 30% of my time is spent on baking. The other 70 is, managing inventory, ordering, any taxes, all that behind the scenes stuff that you don't want to do that isn't fun.
Exactly.
And, hiring, training, even if you're implementing, these processes in place so other people can do it, that takes time. So if you want to do it just because you love to bake, then it may not be the best. And then second is people go, well, I want to be my own boss, make my own hours, and have a ton of money. That's why I want to open a bakery.
Yeah.
Then a bakery is definitely not the thing for you, because as an owner, I am the first one in and the last one to go home. You are like chained to your business. And, when if everything goes wrong, the last person to get called is you. So even when you are away, if there's something that can't be handled, they're still going to call you. You are still the final say. So you are never completely away from it. And then food is difficult, especially savory, like a restaurant or a bakery, because your food goes bad. So everything that you make is only good for a limited time. So there's kind of a lot of waste associated. So all that extra cost, French pastry is labor intensive. So it's a high cost of labor. So I always tell people, if you're in it for the money, then like get a gas station or something that's a lot easier. You can make more money, because a bakery, you don't do it because of the money, and that you're like, this is my baby, that you're doing it because you love it and it's your life.
Yeah, Chelsey.
Yes.
I'm serious. You should put everything in a book, and I will help you to translate to Chinese to sell it.
Perfect. Oh my gosh, I'm ready. One last thing that I would tell people is just have a good support system. So my family is awesome, and I could not have done it without them, or like people like you, because it is so hard. And there are sometimes you just want someone, you're crying and you're like, I can't do this. You need someone to give you a pep talk, or just someone to come sit with you. Like my husband will come sit with me, or like you would come in when I would work late and you would bring soup and you would just work on your stuff across from me. Sometimes you just are like, I just want someone to be there for support. So you can't do it alone. Whether your support system may not be able to, help me bake a cake, but they can support in other ways. You just need people, because it gets hard to kind of be your cheerleaders.
Yeah. Call me when you're boring or lonely.
I do. And especially like what's great is I just put my AirPods in and I can keep working while we talk.
Yeah.
There are so many times that I talk to you where I'm like, I don't feel creative. Like, what am I doing? And you always build me up. And I like to think that we have very similar personalities. That we like build off of each other's energy. And even when we talk about what you're doing, that gets me excited to work on what I'm doing. So, getting someone else who is kind of as ambitious and motivated kind of sparks it in me too when I'm feeling a little slow.
Okay, well, thank you again for coming to my podcast.
Thank you for having me. I'm so happy to do it. And when I heard you were starting a podcast, I was like, I better be invited.
It just feels like the first time we sat outside the kitchen and I asked you these questions because I want to write a brand story for you.
Yeah, exactly. I know you know all my answers. You could answer all of these.
I know. Okay. I hope I can see you soon and talk later about the work.
Yes, exactly. I hope to see you soon, and I know that no matter where anything takes us in life, we're always going to be connected and talk, and that somehow I hope our paths cross again where we can be in the same room together.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. Have a good day.
Thank you so much, Pei. You too. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thanks, Chelsey, for sharing this experience with us. She is really a good person, very hardworking, very sweet, have lots of thoughts. I hope this episode will help you to have some ideas or inspiration about entrepreneur life and food industry. And I believe after listening to her, you will love her more and can't wait to try her macarons. Also, thank you again for listening to PeiPeiTalks. I hope you enjoyed. If you like this episode, you can leave a comment on iTunes Store to let me know. If you want to reach out to me, you can follow my Instagram, PeiPeiTalks, and send me a message. If you want to see Chelsey's fantastic pastries, follow her Instagram, Finesse Pastries. 谢谢大家今天的收听。如果喜欢这集节目啊，可以帮我分享出去 ，tag 我，让我知道你的想法，或是到 iTunes Store 留言评分。想要看中文版本和文字稿，也可以搜寻我的网站 PeiPeiTalks。那如果想要看更多文字讯息，或是跟我聊天，欢迎追踪我的 Instagram。那我们就下周见喽，拜拜。